WFNY BrownsCast. It's been a couple weeks since the end of the seasons. Kind of took a breather to kind of assess where we're at, and we're back. I am your
Recharge the meter here.
right recharge meter. I'm your host Joe Gilbert. I am once again back with my partner Taylor Jezerzak. Taylor, how are we doing?
Pretty good. I think the playoffs went about as well as most Browns fans could have hoped.
Right? Yeah.
Obviously, there are Browns fans out there that would have rather see the Bengals win than the Chiefs, but I think
Not,
the majority of
not this
our
podcast.
staff, anyway, was not in that boat. So,
Right. Yeah.
um, I mean, I enjoyed the playoffs. There was some good games. There was some bad games.
Mhm.
Um, there was, I mean, the Chargers did did something that I only ever had imagined the Browns would do.
Right. Yeah, the first weekend was the wild card weekend was great. Every game was pretty much a close game, and then it kind of got really bad games, and then we got the Chiefs game, Chiefs and Bengals game, which was like the next good game. But
Yeah,
yeah, it was nice for AFC North. All of them are out, which is nice. I'm not one of those guys that are like root for Big Ten or root for AFC North. I want them to lose, so it was
I
good to
just
see
don't
that
need I don't
happen.
need that in my life right now.
No, I don't. Um, but yeah, we are back, kind of doing a season debrief. This is a BrownsCast, part of the Evergreen Podcast Network. And before we get started, this podcast is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. For first-time depositors, enter in the code WFNY at checkout, and Underdog will match your deposit up to $100. Underdog is a great platform if you're tired of the DFS salary system. There are tons of game types, drafts every night, and for every sport. Don't forget to use WFNY at checkout to get your first time deposit matched up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy. Okay, so let's start with kind of rehashing the season. I figured there's a lot of things that came out of the season, but I just want to kind of go over our final thoughts on what went wrong, kind of where the season went. Um, did it go below your expectations in this? So what went wrong? So what's your thoughts there?
The thing is there was a lot of times where it really felt like the season was gonna go off the rails a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It never really did, but I wouldn't necessarily say they outperformed any expectations. I think the only overarching what went wrong is it certainly did feel like, to put it as a broad of term as I possibly could, the vibes were off all
Yeah,
season long.
yeah, that is definitely even before the season. The vibes were way off. Like
I
it
mean,
just started. Like the off season started. Just
yeah,
vibes were
I mean
weird.
when your benchmarks for setting vibes were trading for Deshaun Watson in March and then
Yeah.
giving him a $230 million contract, the
Yep.
vibes were probably not going to recover.
Right. And then the Baker Mayfield kind of stuff, which is
Yeah,
yeah, that
so
was it was a weird season.
it was a weird season. They made the most out of it. I think Jacoby Brissett earned himself
Yeah,
a good contract
definitely.
to be a starting quarterback somewhere. Whether it probably is a bridge guy. There's a lot of teams out there that are looking for bridge guys that would pay Jacoby Brissett $8 to $10 million to not have your
Mhm.
team be completely awful.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you dig down into it, there's a lot of different things that went wrong. And they, other than the biggest one was just the defense. The defense was never it never showed up and on any kind of consistent basis, and that's why we fired the defensive coordinator. Obviously, um, middle of the season, I feel like the offensive line was plagued with nagging injuries that put guys a lot on the borderline of being able to play and not being able to play, and it didn't help them at all. Um, going back to the preseason, you lose your starting center on the first play of the preseason. So it never felt like once the suspension became 11 games, it never felt like the season was going to be what anyone wanted it to be.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can say then what the point? What the hell are we arguing about every week? But
Right.
like the reason we were arguing every week is because you saw enough from this team week in week out, except for 2 or 3, maybe 4 games where they didn't look like they had any shot.
Exactly. Yeah.
They looked like they were on. Like you could argue that like, hey, if they did this or this, they could have won this game for all but like 3 or 4 games.
Right.
So, and that's what makes it frustrating because you
That.
look back on it and you're like,
Yeah.
they weren't that far off.
Right. That's exactly the
They
point I
had
was
all
going
these
to make.
problems and the vibes were never there and they weren't far off.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna hit on too. Expectation wise, I before the season I didn't think they were gonna make the playoffs. So really they didn't kind of miss the expectations. It was what you said though. It was just during the season you saw like they were there. Like the opportunities were there. That Jets game, just the
The
Chargers
Chargers
game, like
game,
yeah, it's
the
like
Falcons
you
game.
right. You saw that they had a chance to exceed expectations, and
Yeah.
they let it fail every time. And what went wrong was just kind of they were unable to kind of get the finer details of the game. Like there were just a few plays where they were just we would see it all season. The breakdowns in the secondary. Late game situations on offense where they just couldn't get it together. It was it was just like as you said, it was just a frustrating kind of watching. You see it, they're there. The opportunities were there, and they just kind of let them fall away the wayside there, and that was the most frustrating part. And the vibes are weird throughout the whole season.
The vibes are going to
Um,
continue to be kind of weird. That's
yeah,
the nature of the game they're playing now.
right. I think it'll be a little bit less weird. I wonder it'll be interesting to see what the talk is because he's now Deshaun Watson is now the starter going into the season. So you don't have some weird like he has to sit out for 11 games or whatever. But it's gonna be an interesting off season as we approach it coming out. But yeah, it was just overall the season it was frustrating. That
Yeah.
was basically what we can boil it down
Yeah.
to. Just a frustration that they could have done so much better because the opportunities were there. They just kind of failed at the
Yeah,
finer
I'm trying.
details
I'm
of the
trying to
game.
going back on it now. I'm trying to think, like the amount of games that they kind of had right there and just didn't
Just let it
didn't
go. Yeah.
execute well enough. I mean, you look at the Falcons, Chargers, and Jets. Right at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Those are 3 games that like they were probably the better team most of the game,
Yep.
and just didn't come out with it. And then the first Ravens game, uh,
Yep.
late
They outplayed
October,
them.
you played better. You outplayed them. You had a pretty bogus penalty at the end,
I know. I was
followed
gonna say that.
followed by. I mean, the video and the false start has been kind of debunked that it actually did happen, but it was the slightest of movements. Um, the Bengals game at the end of the season, the Saints game at the end of the season, the Steelers game at the end of the season. Like these are all games that were there, and like
Yep.
if you want to be a playoff team, you gotta. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's seven games of their 17-game schedule that were borderline.
Right. Well, we were basically what 2 games out. I think.
Yep.
I think it turned out to be 2 games.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and then just late in the season too. Like the what game? What was the second last game? They
The
lost to
Commanders.
the
Commanders are
no not
second to last. The
the
Saints.
third the Saints.
Saints.
Yes, the Saints game. That game they should have won. Yeah, it was just it was just a bunch of those kind of games where they just failed at the. There's obviously the Patriots game
The Patriots, Dolphins, and Bills.
and the Steelers were kind of that was kind of a blowout too. it turned into.
Yeah, but it wasn't really. It didn't feel that way.
Yeah, true. It wasn't like the Dolphins, yeah, in those games. But overall, like the losses were not. They weren't like just devastating kind of blowout losses. They were one
No,
game,
most of
one
these games they
drive,
were in.
one drive, one play that changed the game, and obviously that's the NFL.
Yeah, but if you're gonna be a team that's taken seriously going forward, you can't lose all 7 of those games.
Right.
You're gonna have games where you're better than the other team and you're gonna win. You're gonna have games that you're worse than the other team and you're gonna lose. But half of your schedule, almost half your schedule, was played in that middle ground, and you lost most of them. You can't do that. Like this season, this season will be kind of a referendum on the progress of the franchise as a whole. This upcoming season, because you can't keep having losses like that. In 2020, you didn't have those losses. You made the playoffs.
Yep.
2021, you had those losses and you missed the playoffs.
Right.
2022, you played most of your season with a backup quarterback, and then you threw your starting quarterback off the train going 100 miles an hour and said, "Hey, run."
Right. Yeah.
So, like, it's not a season that you really look back and say, "Yeah, it was a wash. It didn't matter," because you look at some of these games, and if you get the Chargers game, you get the Jets game, and you find any one of those other 5 to win, you're 10-7 and you're in the playoffs.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
So
that's I think we're definitely in agreement there. So okay, coming out of the season, there's obviously a lot of emotions one way or the other. What's the one thing that you're going to come out of the season that you're excited about for next season?
I think the biggest non-coaching thing is that the majority of the players that you rely on are coming back. There's not a single player that the Browns are going to lose in free agency this year that is someone that you're like, we couldn't afford to lose this guy. We just couldn't pay him.
Right.
Like all of your core are both either under contract or they're under contract for a long time, or they
have a year left or something.
Yeah. Like you have your entire core. You have probably 2 more years with this group. 2 more seasons with this group realistically before you have to start to really retool things. So you just got to plug the holes. You got to create the cap space, which I don't think there's many teams better than that in the NFL than the Browns right now. I mean, right now, what do they have officially right now? Like $2 million in cap?
Yeah, $2 million. I think it turns that it can, with some like restructuring, I think you can get to like 30 or something.
Yeah, like you can get to 38 or $40 million.
Yeah.
Like
the NFL is very
the cap doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah. There's like I think that like Deshaun Watson can give you like 10 or 15 just based on like restructuring, which is
the NFL cap is a myth.
Yes.
So and the Browns know that. Yeah, the Browns know that. They're going to figure out a way to get some money out of this offseason because they know they need players.
Yep.
They know that they're not going to be able to just run it back with the same 53 and say, we have our quarterback with a full offseason, we'll be better.
Yeah, like especially without a first round draft pick.
Like,
they know they need to spend a little bit.
Yeah, you need to spend on the defense. You could go and spend on the offense, and we'll get into that later. But I think the biggest thing that should keep people excited going into next season is that you have a lot of this core back. I mean, obviously your excitement level depends on how much you believe in this core, but this same group got you to the playoffs 2 years ago with a objectively worse quarterback. So,
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Deshaun Watson. I just like you saw it in snippets after for
700 days.
700 days not playing. You saw snippets of it where like, damn, we got that franchise quarterback, and I just think a whole offseason under his belts, being able to practice with the guys, knowing that he is the starter. I'm excited to see what they have. I'm excited to see what Stefanski kind of stirs together here. I assume the offense is going to look a lot different next year. I'm wondering how they kind of do their personnel around them, but it's going to be it's going to be exciting to see. The quarterback position is set. There's no talk. We don't have to talk about it this offseason. We had to talk
No,
about it last offseason. We had to talk about the previous offseason. Like it's set.
it was this period last year for about the
Yeah.
next month that was among the worst Browns quarterback discord I have ever seen in my
Oh
life.
God. Yeah.
Discourse I have ever seen in my life.
Yes, it was. Oof. Yeah.
Like I would
Um,
take the Baker versus Josh Allen versus Sam Darnold debate any day over what we went
right.
through last
Yeah.
February.
Because you weren't like you weren't like just fighting over it because it was a thing that you couldn't really know for sure. And yeah, it's just going to be fun to see. Exciting to see that they have a quarterback ready to go next season, and he's should be right up there in the top 10, top 5 ish, hopefully, in quarterback play, and that kind of gets me excited for next season.
Look, if the minimum bar is like top half,
Right,
well, the Browns will be a better team
right,
because the
exactly.
Browns got top half quarterback play out of Jacoby Brissett for 11 weeks.
Yep,
So
yeah,
it could only really go up. You'd hope. I mean, you're paying him that kind of money. You'd hope it can go up.
yeah, yeah. That's what you're paying. Yeah, he better play up that level. Yeah, it's going to be fun to see just how they build around him and how they build the scheme around him, and that's what I'm excited for. I think we're gonna see an offense that we've never seen before as a Browns fan,
Yeah,
like ever, like ever, like we've never had a dual threat kind of quarterback like this at this and with his level of talent. So it's gonna be
Manziel
fun.
doesn't count.
Yeah, Benzo does not count. He couldn't pass. So, yeah, it's gonna be exciting to see that. So that's my thing coming out of this season. Just knowing that we have a franchise quarterback uh, ready to go next season.
Yep.
Okay, and then on the kind of the negative side, what's one thing that kind of worries you coming out of the season with this
Um,
team?
I think the the obvious thing to me, obvious anyway, is that you do need a fair amount of help on the defensive side of the ball in terms of personnel.
Right.
There's a lot of work that needs to be done to shore up, especially the middle of the defense,
Mhm.
and not really a whole lot of cap space to throw around.
Right.
Like even if they get it up to 40 million, which I think, or 38 million, which I think might be the max they could restructure into,
Yeah.
that I mean that's not a lot for the amount that you need to rebuild in the middle of
Mhm.
the defense. Like you
Right.
need, if you're going to truly transition to some of the defenses that um, Jim Schwartz has um, fielded in the past. He's always had an anchored kind of defensive tackle, someone who obviously you're not going to go out and get Fletcher Cox, so you're not going to have someone who's going to be able to be the anchor and be able to rush the passer. But if you're going to
Yep.
be able to settle for someone that can be an anchor, keep defensive linemen off of the linebackers, absorb double teams, not get pushed off the ball, that's someone you need. Those guys don't usually come cheap.
Yep.
So they're going to have to find someone like that. They're going to have to they're probably going to need two of them because they don't have any right now.
Right. Yeah.
Um, they need to find another edge rusher. That can be found in the draft. You have Alex Wright, who the team seems to like, but you need more edge rushers than two. So you need to get two or three guys that you can trust to do that. Um, and then after that, you're still looking at needing linebackers because a lot of those guys that you had were Anthony Walker is a free agent this year. They could bring him back probably for pretty cheap. He's I think he's north of 30 now, and he's coming off an injury. So
Mhm.
he's not going to command a whole ton of money on the
Serious
open
one too.
market. Yeah, he's not going to command a whole lot of money on the open market. So you could bring him back if you think he can still do the job. But you're still going to need to find guys because as well as Tony Fields kind of played down the stretch, he's not at this point in every down he's not a starting linebacker in this league. He's a depth guy.
Yeah.
So if there's anything that really concerns me, it's how they're going to fill all those holes in the middle of the defense with the amount of money that they have.
Right. Yeah.
And the lack of draft capital.
Right. Well, I'm pretty similar to yours. Mine's the defensive line. It's there's 3 starting spots right now that are pretty open. Well, Clowney's not coming back.
Yep.
And the defensive tackles, they didn't have any starters last year.
Nope.
Caliber was.
They didn't even have third string caliber guys.
Right. So that it is, and as you said, there's just not a lot of draft capital, not a lot of trade or
financial capital.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough, kind of shoring up all these holes, especially as you said, in Jim Schwartz's defense. The defensive line is crucial for the success of his defense, and there's a lot of work to be done there, and it's kind of scary to see that they have to fill a lot of holes. There are some nice guys like Alex Wright. I think is going to be a solid player, and maybe he can turn into the starter next year. Who knows? I think Perion Winfrey. I think he showed some it's just the consistency with him. Maybe Jeff. We keep calling him Jeff Schwartz. Jim Schwartz.
I broke you.
I know, right? Maybe Jim Schwartz can really unleash him and kind of get him, because the talent and the athletic ability is there.
Yeah.
So maybe he can do that. But it's just looking at it right now and seeing what you have to kind of use this offseason. It's kind of scary seeing like they got a lot of work to do with not a lot of stuff to use. And just kind of it's a little worrisome that like the draft, they just don't have a first round pick for the next couple of years. Like,
yeah. And that's not to completely ignore the offense either. They still do need someone who can get down the field. They probably need some tight end depth. They need running back depth. They're not going to bring back Kareem Hunt likely.
Yeah.
Not even if he didn't get a contract anywhere else after the season he had and all the I think it's probably one of those mutual parting of the ways.
But
you go do you, we're gonna do us.
And like if you go back, like they didn't sign him either, so it's not like there's a connection with the front offense. So yeah, I would have a hard time seeing him back.
No, and it's hard to justify it with the production on the field. Like he wasn't.
He looked like a different player.
He went off a cliff somewhere. Like it was just quick. His ability to run the ball. Like last year, he was moderately good. Like he was fine.
Yeah,
he was hurt, but he was fine. And this year he was borderline useless.
He really was. He was a detriment at a lot of times.
Yeah, like
he killed the offense. Like he missed spots. He couldn't make any moves anymore. And yeah, it was rough when Nick Chubb was not on the field. It wasn't like previous seasons. It was tough. Yeah, I definitely agree. And it's gonna be this is Andrew Berry's biggest offseason. I know it was probably last season we would thought, but this one there's not a lot of stuff to work with, and he's got to win now.
Like last year was his biggest move. This year has to be his best job.
Yes, that's a good way of saying it. Yeah, he
earns his money this year.
Yeah, and that's they've always talked about it. It's the toughest when you are good and you are running out of draft capital and financial capital. That's the toughest part of the GM. It's kind of improving the team that's already good, but needs more tinkering, and you don't have as much kind of wiggle room to use. So this is going to be obviously a big off season for Stefanski, big season for Stefanski, but yeah, it's also a big one for Andrew Barry.
Yeah.
So we'll see what he has up his sleeve. I expect him to be aggressive. I do.
Yeah, they've been much better at finding free agent guys for the most part than they have been with drafting in late rounds.
Right.
Which, with their current draft capital outlook, drafting in late rounds is about all you got right now. So,
right. Yeah.
I certainly understand the concerns that some people have with having to rely on draft picks to bolster this team, because there's a mixed bag of a track record in the late rounds. Like, yes, you found Donovan Peoples-Jones, but you've also,
then you did Anthony Schwartz in the third round.
Yeah, and you just who'd they pick in front of George Pickens this year? Just a few picks before.
Well, it was Emerson, right?
I don't remember.
I think MJ was the first pick of the draft. Well,
Yeah.
They traded back. Remember, they traded back in the second round.
Yeah.
I think they traded into the third round, back into the third round, and it had 3 picks there. But yeah, it's it'll be interesting to see how they kind of attack the draft this year.
It was David Bell. They took David Bell a few picks before George Pickens. So, make of that what you will.
Yes.
There was a reason George Pickens fell as far as he did.
Yes.
Because he was projected as a late first, early second talent, but he fell to the third.
And we did see a little bit of why this season with Pittsburgh, why he dropped. There's some smoke with his attitude and a little bit of that, but
yeah,
the talent.
You took a kicker in the 4th round. That's ballsy. It's got to work, or that's almost fireable in itself.
Yeah, big season for him too.
Yeah, I mean, last year's draft looks okay on paper, right now.
Yeah.
Martin Emerson, Alex Wright,
yeah,
David Bell, Perrion Winfrey, Cade York, Jerome Ford. Those are all guys that are probably going to contribute this season.
Yeah, they all did.
I mean, Cade York has to contribute because he's the kicker. MJ Emerson. It might be a starter.
Yes, first outside starter. Yeah.
Yeah. Perrion Winfrey could compete for a starting role. David Bell is going to get more looks. Jerome Ford might elevate to the backup role.
Alex Wright might be a starter.
This draft could be a very good draft. I don't know if there's going to be any super high impact guys unless Cade York makes a game-winning field goal in the Super Bowl. But this draft could be there's pieces there that you have faith in. It's some of the other drafts that that are hit or miss. I'm gonna pull up some previous drafts here, because some of the let's look back at this. Anthony Schwartz and James Hudson in the 3rd and 4th round. Tommy Togiai, who we just found out is not an NFL defensive tackle in any sense of the word. Not. The Demetric Felton flyer has not worked out. Harrison Bryant has not really panned out. I mean, Nick Harris could be your starting center this year, so that could be a good 5th round hit. Mm-hmm. Jordan Elliott, Jacob Phillips has spent too much time hurt. Yeah. Harrison Bryant has just not panned out that way.
Man, he had such a great start to his rookie season, and it just kind of.
I think his rookie season, he had a great start, and then he fumbled 3 out of 5 games.
Right, and it's he's never recovered since then.
Yeah.
It's very odd.
Yeah.
It's sort of like Anthony Schwartz. He had that Chiefs game was like, holy shit, did we get somebody like really good? And then he just disappeared off
Yeah.
the face of the
Yeah.
earth.
The interesting thing about these drafts is that aside from guys like JOK and JOK and Greg Newsome, and even you could even kind of lump those guys into this as well. There's not any like holy crap boom players on this draft board.
That's a good point.
There's
Yeah.
there's a lot of solid players, but if you look at it, you're like, okay, well Donovan Peoples Jones is like a solid 2 or 3. You found him in the 6th round, good for you, but like, eh. Tony Fields is a solid linebacker, but he's not making any. Greg Newsome played an entire season without getting a turnover. I think actually, does he even have a turnover in the league yet? I don't think he does.
You got a touchdown.
No, Greg Newsome. I don't think Greg Newsome has a takeaway in the league.
Oh, that's a good point.
So
I would say this. I think Greg Newsome is a high end starter. Maybe not a star.
Yeah, he's a high floor starter.
Yeah. I think JOK is when he's really good, he's a high end starter. When his consistency is a little bit off right now.
It's matchup dependent. That's I think that's the biggest issue with him is he's very, very good in some matchups, and then in other matchups he's like
Baltimore Ravens,
almost a detriment.
Yeah.
Like against the Steelers, he's not very good. Against the Ravens and Bengals, he's very good.
Yeah. I think the killers have just been like Jedrick Wills was just that was like kind of their high. I think that's his highest pick.
Yeah, it is
as GM, and he's turned into a usable starter.
Above he's an above replacement starter,
right?
Which is fine, but maybe not at 10.
Yeah,
but none of those offensive tackles from that draft have really.
I think Tristan Wirfs
he had a bad season.
He did. I think
Mekhi Becton has played like 3 games.
Every single player on that Bucs offense, just besides Mike Evans, had a terrible year.
Mekhi Becton's played like 4 games in his career.
Yeah, Mekhi has been bad. Andrew Thomas, I think he had a better season with the Giants, but it's definitely true that man, I was so high on all those tackles, and Tristan Wirfs is probably the best one, and
yeah, but it's not by a wide enough margin that you're like, why did we not pick him?
Right. Yeah.
Like if you Andrew Thomas had an okay year. Jedrick Wills was next. Mekhi Becton, Tristan Wirfs, Austin Jackson with the Dolphins. I'm not even sure he's playing. He might be. Isaiah Wilson for the Titans. Like none of the only. I don't know what Wikipedia has as this yellow fill-in. It might be Pro Bowl or something. But yeah, Pro Bowl. Tristan Wirfs is the only Pro Bowler from the offensive line in that draft.
Right. Yeah.
And that,
which is crazy because I wasn't alone. Like that was considered one of the best offensive tackle classes in quite a while, and that's just how it shows you how crazy the draft can be. It can be. It is tough. It's tough, and especially when you don't have a first round pick, it's going to be even. Yeah, it'll be. It's going to be up to Andrew to kind of hit on some more guys with their picks. Okay.
Yep.
Next segment, we're gonna incorporating your grievance room segment.
Yeah, bringing it back from the dead.
Bring it back from the dead. Let's air out one big grievance with the Browns. Anything Browns. Anything. It can be.
Well, since this is my segment, I think you should go first.
Okay. So I'm going to go with actually.
What is? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to grieve. I'm grievancing the coverage, the late season coverage, and a lot of the off season coverage of Kevin Stefanski. I thought it was ridiculous. People were calling him on the hot seat. Should he even fired this offseason? It just my mind was blown. Um,
Yeah, I think we had pretty
it,
in-depth discussions about this in previous pods.
Right. It was just so talk radio was just unwatchable or unlistenable for the
It's
last
okay. The same
several
people are
weeks.
trying to fire Jamie Bickerstaff right now.
Yeah, right, right. As they are blowing out the Wizards right now.
Yeah.
It just I couldn't take it anymore. I always listen to it when I'm on the way home. And I just had to turn it off and listen to nothing. Listen to
Yeah,
the road.
I would, and this might be me protecting myself for my own mental health, but like during Brown season, if the Browns are not doing well, I just don't even listen because I just know
Yeah,
it's gonna piss me off in some way. Like
right.
I don't need to hear the discuss. Like I know you guys have 3 hours to fill in the afternoon,
Yeah,
3 or 4 hours to fill in the afternoon, but
yeah,
we don't need to be having discussions on whether or not we should trade Myles Garrett or fire Kevin Stefanski.
right.
Like
Yeah. And just like
it's not even worth my brain power.
the topics of like the analytics. Oh my god, people are just so scared of math.
The Eagles
And
are literally the most
it is
analytically driven
it
franchise in the NFL right now. And
seriously
look where they're at.
it is the most frustrating thing to listen to when people are just afraid of getting more information to help narrow down your choices. It is just it was just so that's my grievance. It just the whole coverage of Kevin Stefanski this season has been
I mean, there's a lot to grieve about when it comes to coverage
yeah
of the Browns anyway.
right.
Ah,
And there was stuff you could definitely blame Stefanski for a few things, but like just the point of where they were at, saying he's just a disaster, he deserves to be fired, was just insane.
yeah,
So
there's certainly some things from the latter half of the season that you can look at it and say
yeah,
you can have questions like why did the offense get so much worse down the stretch?
exactly. Yeah, like
Why like this offense went from being one of the most efficient in the league, scoring every
to
first drive to not being able to score at all.
right. Yeah, yeah,
And
definitely. There's definitely some like he's got a lot of work to do this offseason. There's stuff to improve on, but
some of that was injuries, some of that
yeah,
was introducing a new quarterback. Some of that was the weather down the stretch, which sucked for the most part.
yeah, and
Um,
like this season is gonna be it's I will say it now. It's a make or break season for Stefanski. I think he
yeah,
knows that. I think the Browns know that. He's got to make the playoffs. like,
I mean,
obviously, barring
even if he doesn't, he's got to miss the playoffs, going like 10-7.
right, yeah, or barring like a catastrophic like injury plague or something.
Yeah, unless you're the Niners from a couple years ago, where literally your entire roster
Or
was on
or this
IR.
season or any season that you're the 49ers.
Yeah, I don't know what god they pissed off, but
Seriously, right? Yeah, that's my grievance. The coverage of Kevin Stefanski this season. What is
I would
yours?
I would say mine is somewhere along the same lines.
Mhm.
Mine is just kind of with the general vibe of the fan base and some of the more vocal people, I guess.
Yeah,
Just calling the like obviously there's people out there that say if they don't make the playoffs, the season's a failure. But the season wasn't as much of a failure as some people,
right.
Zach Jackson, would like you to believe.
They're a writer.
Anyone at anyone at KNR. Um,
Anyone on the Browns beat.
yeah, but like, yes, they were 7-10, and that was a drop off from the year before. Yes, it's a good roster. They were a few plays away. They had some bad. They were one. I think there was some analytic that came out. Yes, analytic. There was some metric that came out that showed that they were in like the bottom 5 of overall luck in the entire season.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and
Obviously, Browns, it's going to be always
yeah,
like that. But still,
yeah, but the general feeling that this season was a total failure
yeah,
by all parts,
like
and
Hugh
people needed to,
Jackson
and
level.
people, yeah, like we are 5 years removed, 6 years removed from some of the worst football ever played in NFL history.
Exactly.
Like,
It's like people forget this.
yeah, the thing, and this ties into yours. If resetting your franchise for what 17 seasons, resetting it every 2 to 3 years didn't work any of those 7 times, why is it going to work this time?
Right. Like, as Browns fans, we should be experts on what bad football is. We should
Yes.
be experts at this.
This
and
was
somehow,
not bad football. It was
right,
frustrating football.
frustrating football.
It wasn't bad in that it was irredeemably awful football to watch. This team had no hope of ever doing anything. It
Yes.
was, this team could be so much more. They
If
just couldn't find it.
Fumble themselves.
They couldn't find it all season
Yeah.
long. They found it against the Bucks. They found it against, well, the defense found some magic elixir against the Texans. Might have just been the Texans.
It was the Texans. It was the Texans.
But, like, there was games where it looked like the Bengals game on Halloween.
Yeah.
Like
you
that's a
can't
team
forget
that
Like,
that's a team that you beat the hell out of a team that was a really bad penalty and a couple interceptions away from going to a Super Bowl.
Yep.
Like,
exactly.
the issue was 2 weeks prior to that, you got the hell beat out of you by Bailey Zappi. Like,
Thank
yes,
God the Patriots are not on our schedule this year.
there are some.
We need a break from them.
There are some super frustrating things, and like things that should not have happened to a team that wants to be taken seriously during this year. But that happens to almost every team.
Yep.
The Chargers were a laughingstock, and then at the very end of the season, they figured it out.
Yep.
The
Jaguars were
awful
in the beginning.
Yeah, the Jaguars and Lions were awful at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, we made fun of their defense. We made fun of the Lions' defense all year,
numerous times.
I would always say, like, "Oh, the Browns are the worst defense," and then you would always say, "No, there's always."
No, the Lions still exist.
The Lions still exist. Like, yeah, it's just.
And at the end of the season, it proved to be that way. But
yes,
like when they got blown out by the Panthers.
Oh my gosh! What a weird season.
I think they gave up 250 rushing yards in the first half of that game.
Yep.
So, the season, just to kind of wrap this one up, and I know, like, anyone could come on and debate me, and if there's people out there that want to comment on this, yes, there's going to be people who say they didn't make the playoffs, they didn't win the games they were supposed to, it was an unmitigated disaster, everyone should be fine. That's just not how smart football works.
Nope.
You don't. We saw what happens when an owner makes a knee-jerk reaction. When we fired Rob Chudzinski after 1 year. Like, that team was bad, but he wasn't so bad that he wasn't Freddie Kitchens bad.
Yeah. Right.
He deserved to at least get 1 more year, but they fired him.
Yep.
Freddie Kitchens got fired after a year. That was an unmitigated disaster. That team was a disaster.
Yes, I remember that keenly.
That was a good team that was a disaster. The Browns this year were a good team that was not a disaster. Right. They couldn't get out of their own way most weeks.
Yep.
And like they don't have to do much different next season. They have to stay moderately healthy. They have to win 2 or 3 more games that are close. They have to get top 10 quarterback play out of their top 1 paid quarterback.
Yeah. Yep.
So, like, you're not asking this team to make a jump from 4-13 to 10-7.
Mm-hmm.
You're asking them to find like 7 plays over the course of a season that make a difference.
Yeah.
And if Kevin Stefanski is a good coach, he'll find those plays.
Yep.
If Jim Schwartz is a good defensive coordinator, he'll find those plays.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put that on Mike Prefer.
No.
No. Have the other guys find the plays. You just exist.
I will say that the special teams did play better at the end.
No,
of the
yeah,
year.
they were much better down the stretch. Cade York was not a problem down the stretch.
Yes. Yeah. So okay, so that was kind of our kind of recap of the season-ish. Our thoughts coming out of it. Now we kind of hit to the off season. We kind of highlight what's ahead here. So we're going to do a little rankings here. Our top 5 biggest needs for the Browns this offseason in terms of roster positions. So I think what do you want to do? Just start at 5 for each of us, and we'll talk about it, or you want to start at 1? Let's start at 1.
Let's start at 1. Probably be easier.
So I think we're probably both on interior defensive line.
Yep.
Yeah. There's not much to talk about here.
I think we've addressed this enough.
We have no starters.
No, you have no starters. You have no backups.
Right.
You have practice squad guys.
It was the all-time worst unit.
Well, actually, practice squad guys is not fair to Taven Bryan. He wasn't awful. He's just not.
He's a serviceable backup. Probably.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Right. It was kind of funny watching the playoffs, man. What it would be like to have interior defensive linemen that could make plays.
Yeah.
I saw Chris Jones and oh man, it's just and all the Eagles guys like it's
DJ Reader.
Right, DJ Reader, yeah. So that's definitely number 1, and that's probably number 1 by far, I would say.
I mean, that's number. If that's not number 1, you better have a damn good reason why it's not.
Right. Yeah. When you have nobody at the position, you need to. That should be number 1.
Yeah.
So, number 2, I have edge rusher. What do you have?
I would also go edge. And it's not because it's not quite the same reason. You just don't have guys there right now.
Right.
You have Miles and you have.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have bodies. You have Miles and you have Alex Wright.
Right. That's the same. I would agree with that. And you don't have the Clowney of 2021. You need to find someone to counterpart on the starting lineup with Miles.
Yeah.
Like he can't just do it alone. I know Schwartz will be better at kind of isolating them and kind of getting them in better positions than Joe Woods did, but still he needs help, and that's got to be high up there on, especially with Schwartz now. The defensive line is huge, so they need it. I think they need a starter. And then if they're high on Alex Wright to be the starter, then they need a very capable rotational edge rusher. But
I mean, right now you're going into the season with 3 defensive ends on the roster, right? You have 3 defensive ends on the roster that aren't Jadeveon Clowney and he doesn't count. So
right. Who's the third
you
one?
need to find guys. Isaiah Thomas.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he could be a guy that can turn into a rotational guy, but still, you just don't have any sure answers besides Myles Garrett.
No, you need 2 or 3 guys.
Yeah,
one of them needs to be starter level.
Right.
You need to have 3 starter level defensive linemen, 3 defensive ends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you can't go into a situation where you have both of your starters rotated out and then you have no one. So
right. Yeah. Okay. So we're agreement on the first 2.
Yeah.
For 3, I have wide receiver. What do you have?
Linebacker.
Okay. I do have linebacker in my top 5. So
yeah.
I'll hit on wide receiver first. Wide receiver, I think it's a solid group, but I think there's just one key missing piece, and they have no speed besides Schwartz, and Schwartz can't do anything besides run
in a straight line.
One straight line, and catching is a question mark. So they just need a guy that can stretch the field, and I feel like Watson is such a great downfield passer and such a guy who can like extend plays, and getting a guy that can take the top off the defense is just going to make this offense a lot more explosive. We talked about explosive plays is one of the most important things in the NFL now.
Yeah.
Browns are number one, I think, in rushing, but like I think they were bottom 5 or bottom 10 in passing explosive plays, and that's got to change. Especially with Watson as your quarterback, he should be in the top 10. Like he's got that talent to make it an explosive offense. So I think they need some sort of speed kind of vertical threat that can kind of spread it open, and that makes it easier for Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's a guy who can't really separate that well. But and then it makes Amari Cooper's job even easier.
Yeah, it gives Amari Cooper a little bit more range to find open spaces in the secondary.
Right,
Because
and
there won't be
he's a guy who can make big plays, but he had no room last year. It was so tough for him to get any space.
Yeah, his biggest plays all came run after the catch anyway.
Yeah.
Like he didn't have very many deep balls thrown his way.
Yeah.
So the deep ball guy was actually Peoples-Jones most of the time because he could go up and get it.
I know that was yeah. So yeah, I'll go wide receiver at 3. What's your you said linebacker?
Yep.
Okay.
I think wide receiver is probably my next one.
Okay.
For a lot of the same reasons we just talked about, I think we're one player. They're one guy. They're one like archetype away. They have the big bodied guy. They have the possession guy. They technically have 2 big bodied wide receivers because Njoku is, when he's running a route, he's more of a receiver than a tight end.
Yeah.
He and Peoples-Jones are almost, Njoku's taller, but they're the same kind of build. But they just need someone that is able to make defenses protect the deep parts of the field, which they haven't had in a long time. They haven't had that kind of receiver in a while, since probably prime Josh Gordon.
Yeah.
I mean, OBJ was never really that guy. Travis Benjamin
had like a half a season. What was that? Was it a season?
He had a couple years.
Yeah.
He had a couple years.
Yeah.
But, he had bad quarterback play, so it was hard to tell.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, when your quarterbacks are Brian Hoyer, who can't really throw the ball downfield, and Johnny Manziel, who didn't want to be a quarterback.
Yeah.
Your options are limited.
Yep.
So, there's a couple guys that, and not to tease the next segment, but there's a couple guys that, like, the Browns could go out and get.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so you would, and then just talk about linebacker before we.
I mean, we've kind of addressed it in just the middle of the defense. The middle of the defense needs so much help.
Yeah. And you really only have JOK.
Yeah, I mean, you're bringing back guys. You're bringing back Tony Fields. You're bringing back some of those guys, but you need some kind of presence. Reggie Ragland was a decent presence in the latter half of the season, but there's a reason that he was available off a practice squad.
Right.
Dude's 250 pounds, can't move very well. He's a good interior linebacker in like the 1980s. He's not a good interior linebacker now.
He'd be really good.
They need some kind of a presence in the middle. And it could be Anthony Walker. They could go out and draft some guys. I want to say, I mean, there's a guy, and we'll get to it in the next segment. There's a couple guys out there that I think they could try and target and make the
linebacker is kind of a position that you can kind of steal almost in free agency.
Because there's not a whole lot of
money going towards them.
Yeah, there's just not the kind of money, like the fact that the linebacker from Baltimore got all that money. I forget his name right now.
Mosley,
Yeah, he got so much money. That's more money than linebackers are usually getting right now.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you were linebacker 3, and then wide receiver 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then I went safety 4. So safety is an interesting position. So Ronnie Harrison is gone. I would be so surprised if he's coming back. My question is if so this could be off my list, but I have an inkling that John Johnson might be cut,
Yeah.
um, because I think he can save quite a bit of money.
Yeah, there's some cap save there.
Yeah, and if so, then you have a free safety spot that needs to be filled. Um, I really think Grant Delpit played really well late in the season. He's your strong safety, um, but they need the guy over the top. And really, I don't think John Johnson played like he deserves that money. So I would assume they would probably cut bait with him. And
That could
we'll
all
get
come down to how
how
Jim Schwartz
Schwartz.
feels
Yeah,
about him. Like if
right.
he sees
Maybe.
his skill set and says we can do something with this, he
Mhm.
wasn't being used correctly in the last system,
That's a good point.
then
Yeah,
they could keep him around because it's not like he was a bad player.
he
There,
just wasn't worth that money. Yeah, that's
yeah, he
yeah,
wasn't worth that money in the system he was being asked to play in.
yeah.
So I mean, it could just come down to a system fit. That like it
Right.
seemed like a lot of guys in Joe Wood's system weren't playing in their best
Weird.
position, which hey, like do you? I guess.
And I do think they Schwartz likes to run single high, and I don't think that's John Johnson's kind of forte. So I think that's another kind of tending towards. I think he might be cut.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
then
there's
we'll
been a
get
lot of talk about him being one of the cap
yeah,
casualties. So, like,
and we'll
obviously,
get
there's some
to it,
reason for it.
and we'll get to it in the next segment. There's quite a bit of safety help in the free agency class. So
Yeah.
I think they might actually go towards that. So that's my 4, and then 5 is the linebacker for me. I think it definitely can move up if John Johnson doesn't get cut. But linebacker, Taki is a free agent. Walker's a free agent. Those are 2 of your most productive linebackers over the past couple years. And JOK is pretty much your only kind of reliable one right now.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely need. And this one could be an easy one. It could be just re-signing those 2. Like
Yeah.
it might not even be like the linebacker core wasn't bad last year. It just had catastrophic injuries, like
Yep.
just catastrophic injuries, where they were down to like what their 5th linebacker, I think it was. It was
Fifth would be generous.
right. I
Fifth
know, right?
fifth was before Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So it's not going to be a hard position, I think, to fill, but it's definitely one they need a hit. So what's
Yeah.
your number 5?
Um, offensive line.
Okay.
It's not because I don't believe in any of the guys that they have.
Do you have
A
a
lot of
particular section, like interior, out, offensive tackle, or
I think it feels like anyone who plays on the right side.
so the right side? Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, those guys just haven't been able to stay healthy,
Yeah.
and you can't sacrifice your season to throw in Yelda Frohold out there again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's nothing on him. I mean, he was better as a guard than he was a center, but it still wasn't like you can't lose your season to losing one offensive lineman.
Yeah.
And like I don't think they haven't spent a whole lot on depth on the offensive line because when you have one of the best offensive line coaches in the league, you think you can fix almost anything, but you can't fix almost anything. Like you can't fix everything.
Yeah.
So adding some depth there, whether it's through the draft or just some free agency, like you can't lose a season to losing your offensive line,
Right.
especially when you
Yeah.
have a $230 million quarterback.
Right. Yeah. I think just kind of the ones that just barely. I think tight end and offensive line were right on the edge of
Yeah.
need. Um, tight
Tight
end,
end is just another depth one.
right, and
The tight end
it's
depth seems to be easier to find.
right, and it's cheaper, definitely
Yeah.
cheaper. Like you can get that in
Yeah.
free agency. You can find man. We've had some solid backups back in the day. Just finding tight ends back for cheap off of the free agent market. So
Yeah.
yeah, those are. I think that's easier to find, and then offensive line you needed some backup depth too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have pretty similar rankings there. Our top two is pretty easy to figure
Yeah. I
out.
mean,
There.
if you watch this team for 17 games, then you know what their issues are.
Yep. Yep.
Hell, I don't think
Okay.
you need 17 games. You might have only needed 10.
Okay. Okay. So the last part before we get out of here, we're gonna do a kind of a little off-season draft of kind of players that now these can be unrealistic, not super unrealistic. Like you're not getting Aaron Rodgers. That'd be stupid, anyways. But
You're not trading
right,
for CeeDee Lamb.
right, yeah, and you're not,
Plus,
and
I
you're
don't think
not,
the Cowboys are going to come within 3 miles of Andrew Berry for the next
right,
10 years.
and these are our top three options. So it's not like you're gonna get 1, 2, 3. So
Yeah.
we're gonna do a draft here. Taylor, you're gonna go first, and I'll go. It's gonna be a snake draft, so I'll go second or third, and then second, and we'll do our top three to fill the biggest holes in the defense with players. So, with the first pick, what are you gonna do
I'm going to
to
pull
fill
up
that?
one position group here. I think the name that came up very, very often as a potential Browns just all in one fix the middle of the defensive line
I think I know where you're going.
was Daron Payne.
Yep, that was
Daron
my
Payne.
number one pick
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
like, I think there's some connection with him and Schwartz. I think they might have there's a reason that name came up a lot. Might have been because he's a free agent. Might have been because
He also loved Watson or something. Like
yeah,
there's a lot of connections.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's. I mean, if you can figure out a way to get that, I'm looking at Sport Trek here. What do they have him as his annual? They have his market value at $97 million. So,
But they do need
ouch.
to spend. I have to say they do need to spend money here. Like
Yeah,
they
but I
can't
mean,
keep patching it. Obviously, maybe not that much, but we'll
yeah, I
see.
mean, they're looking at they're saying his average annual salary is 19.4. If you're looking at having 38 mil this year,
Is half of
that's
your that's
most of
half.
it right there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I mean, I don't know where else you're gonna go.
Right.
I mean, and Ndamukong Suh sat there all season, and
Right.
they didn't do anything with him. So,
Right. If you're gonna go one position to get that star, that would be a perfect kind of fit for need.
yeah,
He was number one on my list too, so I'm definitely in agreement there. For number two, I'm gonna go Jesse Bates.
he
I
was
think
he
this
was in
is
my short list.
yeah. I think this is just like kind of a double positive here. So it takes away your rival's probably best secondary guy, I would say.
Well, their best
Um,
safety.
yeah,
They're
best
going to
safety.
argue that Awuzie is their best secondary
True.
player,
Yeah.
but
But he's kind of their leader in the secondary too. So it's gonna be that would be a huge get. And then he just fits what Schwartz needs as that kind of single high safety. He was a draft love of me back when he came out of I think it was Wake Forest, if I'm not mistaken. So I would just love to get Jesse Bates back here. Hurting your rival and improving your defense. So
yeah,
I'll go with Jesse Bates as my first pick there. And then my wraparound for the second round, I'm gonna go trade for Brandon Cooks. I know we
that
kind of
would be interesting. He's been connected to them for a while.
yeah
think, I mean, that would obviously solve a lot of the receiver issues. I think since I have the next two picks, I'll do my receiver trade or receiver as well.
Okay.
I think a realistic target for them in the receiver market is DJ Chark.
Okay.
He's a free agent out of Detroit.
Yeah.
He's not going to command a ton of money.
And he's your deep threat.
And he runs a 4.3.
That man can run.
So
that man can run.
Yeah, and I think he's got decent size as well.
Yeah, he's a bigger guy.
Yeah, so
Florida, yeah.
Yeah, so like he checks a lot of boxes.
And he's a guy really who's not had good quarterback play.
No,
like
I mean
he
had
in Jacksonville.
Yeah, he was in quarterback hell, and then
he went to the Lions,
and then Jared Goff just didn't find him all that much,
right?
For whatever reason, he was really into Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Which
had him on his fantasy team.
Had him
on his fantasy team
for good reason.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not doubting it, but
yeah.
So since I also have the wraparound,
yeah,
there's an interesting linebacker that I believe he's a free agent. I'm going to check this list to make sure I'm not being stupid, because I do not want to be stupid. Yes, he's a free agent. Okay. Another kind of piggybacking off of your second pick, Jermaine Pratt, Bengals linebacker, kind of had a very good season for them.
Yeah.
They don't want to lose him, but I don't know if they're going to be able to pay a linebacker this offseason if they're going to commit their money elsewhere.
Yeah, they got Logan Wilson already, so it's hard to kind of pay two linebackers.
Yeah, you can't pay two linebackers big bucks. You have your two big contracts coming. There's already rumors floating out that you're not going to be able to pay your wide receiver too.
Yeah. Right. Another hurting your rival again too.
Yeah.
That always helps.
I hope the Cardinals hire their defensive coordinator as their head coach while we're at it. Bengals fans that I know speak very highly. Like they speak highly of his play. So he fits a need for the Browns. He hurts the Bengals, and it's a win-win.
Right. Yeah. Oh, good pick. Good pick. Last one, I'm in between two guys. I think it's either Dalvin Tomlinson or Draymond Jones. I'm going to go Draymond Jones. I love his upside. I thought he performed. He's kind of a disruptive defense tackle, which I love. I love like just seeing all the disruption during the playoffs of D tackles. It's just kind of. I want to get one of those guys, and I think Draymond's still very, very young. This will be his first kind of getting out of the contract of his rookie contract. So I'm going to go Draymond Jones as my third pick, and it adds a huge need, fills a huge need down in the middle of the field. What's your pick? Last pick.
I made mine.
Oh no, you made Pratt.
Yeah. Who do you have? Who do you have as honorable mention?
Okay, I'm gonna go Charles Amenu. I think he was last with the Texans. I think it was.
What position is he?
Rusher.
Oh, okay.
Him or Arden Key. I think they need a young guy, to go alongside Myles Garrett, and I think both of them. I don't think there will be huge money comparatively to like what we paid Clowney and all that, but it kind of gives you the young upside. So I would go edge rusher would be with one of those. What's your honorable mention?
Well, before I chose Chark, I was thinking that I might try to swing the trade for Jerry Jeudy that people have been wanting to do.
Oh, I know that keeps coming up.
Yeah,
I don't know with Sean Payton there. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that would be happening. just to kind of so we have a kind of a match in terms of position. I'll find an edge rusher that I.
Yeah.
Let's see.
It's not a great group, and it's not a great group in the
You know
free.
who's gonna come cheap. I think,
Who is that?
and I think he's
Clowney?
a defensive tackle as well. Matthew Ioannidis.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, he
He's like
was in
a
Carolina
swing.
this year. He had a pretty solid season with them.
He's like a
Uh,
swing defensive lineman, right?
yeah, and that
Yeah,
kind of fits what Schwartz does
yeah,
because they would line Fletcher Cox out up at the wide nine sometimes for no discernible reason,
yeah.
and it would work.
Right.
So yeah, I mean there's definitely guys out there that can help this team. It's whether or not it's how attractive the team is to them, how much money they can pay.
Yeah. The,
Um,
the the nice thing is there's a lot of interior defensive linemen available.
yeah, there's a lot of
Like
help that can come.
high price, and kind of your middle of the road price that you could get.
Yeah, there's a lot that can of help out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Matt Ioannidis had 13 games, 37 tackles, a sack.
Yeah.
Serviceable.
You were forced to watch them, so you would know.
I didn't. I did not watch a lot of Panthers this year. I watched 2 games from beginning to end. One of them was the Browns game. I was there, and the other
Yeah.
one was the Bengals game, which I didn't watch beginning to end because that was a beatdown of epic proportion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't purposely watch a whole lot of Panthers.
As you should.
There was not a whole lot to watch offensively, and it just didn't.
Yeah.
It was not entertaining to watch
Yeah.
Brian Burns have to try to carry a team.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that was fun. That was I was thinking we can do more of these, like especially around free agency. We'll get more. We'll probably hear more rumors or more kind of circulation, and more names might come out of who's available.
Yeah,
So once free agency gets around here, which is what, March something, or middle of March, I think.
I
Usually.
believe. Let me look.
It's usually around NCAA tournament time.
Yeah,
So,
we've had this discussion. I think it's like March 14th.
okay, so
Uh,
that's the week before, or that's a few days before the start of the tournament. So
March 15th at 1 p.m. Pacific.
okay, is that when you can start talking?
That's when free agency begins.
You can't sign anybody, but you can start.
Yeah,
Talking.
I don't think there's not a legal tampering period in the NFL. I don't believe so.
Good.
That doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Right. True. But yeah, so we'll be back around then. And if there's any other big news, we'll be back before that. Yeah,
Man,
this
I don't
was
know what
fun.
big news. After last season, I don't know if anything could be any big news this year.
Right. Yeah, true. I would think we're going to be a little bit quiet until we get to free agency, but once again, you never know with the Cleveland Browns.
How was last year at this time when you were dealing with the Baker discussion?
Oh, not fun. Literally.
How many pods did you guys do in the month of February?
We literally only did one because we were like, how much can you talk about? like there's just so little like to change. And I literally said after, I think it was the second last game, it was, what did they lose to the Bengals or something, or the Pittsburgh Steelers or something? I was like, I think that's the last game I ever see with Baker Mayfield, and it turned out right.
I was at the Monday night game.
Yeah,
in Pittsburgh. I don't know.
Brutal.
Yeah, it was cold. They sucked.
He sucked.
You know. Yeah. Yeah. Everything was great. Get to hear. I get to see all the terrible towels in action. My favorite. But
yeah, well, this was fun.
Yep, and we'll be around. Who do you got in the Super Bowl?
I got Chiefs.
See, I just think the Eagles are too complete. I don't know what we're gonna get out of Fields, but the Eagles are such a complete team.
Yeah, I just I just have a hard time betting against Patrick Mahomes.
No, yeah, and that's the thing that makes the Super Bowl so interesting. Like,
Yeah, it's gonna be a great game.
The better team doesn't have the best player.
Yeah, it's gonna be a
And
great game, I think.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it'll be entertaining. Hopefully, the commercials don't suck.
I think.
Yeah.
I just wonder about Hurts in the big game here.
Yeah.
It'll
I
be
have a
interesting.
feeling they're going to do a lot of stuff that doesn't rely on him throwing the ball a whole lot.
I would think so because
I think
the Chiefs aren't very good at stopping the run, I believe.
No, and they've not faced a team. Actually,
Yeah.
I think I read right after the last Monday that the Chiefs didn't face an offense over 14th in efficiency in running game efficiency all season, and the Eagles are like 1.
Oh boy, yeah. I do love the Kelsey Bowl kind of.
Yeah, I do like that
side of things too. Yeah, I'm excited to see how it goes. And
I wish I was more excited for the halftime show. I'm sure it'll be a great show. I'm just not like super into Rihanna.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really pumped about last year's, but yeah.
Who was? Oh yeah, the last year was the rap boy.
Dr. Dre, and yeah.
Yeah. Be interesting to see how it changes now that Apple's doing it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Taylor Swift halftime show 2024. Just wait.
Oh man, he'll get all the Swifties on. It's going to be the most watched Super Bowl ever, just because the Swifties are watching.
my wife, large Swiftie,
yeah.
Was convinced it was going to be this year because this year was the first one that Apple was the presenting sponsor. For years, it had been Pepsi, and Taylor Swift is endorsed by Diet Coke, so that couldn't happen. Now it's Apple, so she thought it was going to happen this year, but then she announced a tour, so she figured it wouldn't happen because of the tour, and she said, "Oh yeah, next year. It'll be next year."
Next year.
So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, but should be a good game, and this was fun. So we'll be back around March 14th, you said. So we'll probably be before that preview and everything.
Yeah, we'll pop on during the NCAA tournament and recap free agency, and then we'll be on during the draft.
Yeah. Yes. We have some fun plans for that. But thanks for joining us, everybody. This is another WFNY BrownsCast, part of the Evergreen Podcast Network. I was Joe, and this was Taylor, and thanks for joining us, everybody.